I was looking at a report yesterday, which I think shows how unpleasant certain aspects of feminism can be. Third wave feminism, I'm referring to. I've never shied away from criticizing it, and I think this is a good example of where it can really just get absurd. I'm just going to read out the report, let that speak for itself, and then, as always, put my take forward. So this is the report. It's an online report. I'll try and put a link. It's from Nine News and it's from the Australian state of Victoria. So the report's by Chanel Sagon. I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. Victorian school says asking male students to apologise for their gender in an assembly was wrong. A Victorian school has admitted it missed the mark after asking all male students to stand up in an assembly to apologise for their gender in the wake of the Justice for Women movement. Schoolboys from Brar College in Warrnambool, again, hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, were asked to stand in the symbolic gesture of apology on behalf of their gender at a whole school assembly discussing respect for women this week. The move sparked uproar from parents, with many slamming the gesture as inappropriate. Mother Danielle Shepherd told 3AW's Neil Mitchell this morning her 7-year-old son, her year 7 son, was left feeling confused and upset by the act. Um, he said that they had to watch a video, and once they watched the video, they were all asked to stand in solidarity to apologise to the female gender on behalf of their gender, which he wasn't sure 100% why, she said. He now has this misconception that all boys are now looked on as predators. Principal Jane Boyle, in a statement, said in hindsight the gesture was inappropriate. Boys were asked as a symbolic gesture of apology for the behaviours of their gender that have hurt or offended girls or women, she said. In retrospect, while well intentioned, we recognise that this was part of the assembly was inappropriate. Today, the school is contacting parents to explain the reasons behind the assembly and to ensure that any student who requires support is fully aware that it is available. Miss Shepherd said she did not believe the school had any malice intentions, but they had got it wrong on this occasion. It wasn't a very thought out process, I don't think, by the school, she said. I understand what they were trying to promote. They've just completely gone about it the wrong way. Um, I don't really accept this line about good intentions in this case. I'm not sure, I'm not familiar with the Australian education system, so I don't know what year 7 there equates to, but I imagine it's um, children. If it's like the UK system, I I don't know. I'm not familiar with the system. It doesn't specify the age, but let's say that these are young boys, maybe 10 years old, 8, 9, 10 years old. I don't know. Clearly, they're children. Um, what sort of effect is that going to have? Getting them to sort of stand up and flagellate themselves metaphorically for something that's beyond their control. I mean, getting a boy to basically apologize for the behavior of bad adult men is preposterous. I don't read that as inappropriate or a bad judgment or good intentions. I consider it downright misandry, and it is about time that misandry is challenged a lot more. Hatred of men and boys. Now, is it literally hatred of men and boys? Maybe not. But is everything that is labelled misogyny literally hatred of women and girls? I would argue no, it isn't. Because we hear the term misogyny thrown around so much. Um, Hate crimes against women and girls is obviously misogyny. But, some feminists, frankly, will use that term whenever they are criticised. Oh, it's because of misogyny. Um, I was rather disgusted by this, actually, and it shows just how far some feminists will go to push their anti male agenda. And I would say that moderate feminists, if they really aren't anti male, they need to prove it and condemn this unreservedly. Okay? Let's not make excuses about good intentions. It was wrong, just period. It was wrong. Now, I'm not saying this is the norm, but this is the sort of attitude that some feminists are pushing. I know that Australia has had serious problems in recent months. And the Morrison government's under a lot of pressure with allegations against male ministers. I don't know enough about that to wade into it in detail. Um, but the fact that there is a debate campaign about women's rights in Australia isn't an excuse to shame all young boys. It's just well, all men actually. I mean, I think it's particularly bad that it's children that are being shamed in this way. But I don't support collective male shaming in general of adult men either. Why should decent men who don't mistreat women be shamed for the actions of those that do? Now, I've heard the argument not all men do it, but all men have a responsibility. Okay, well, what does that mean? It means that decent men shouldn't stand by and watch a woman being abused. Fair enough. But again, we need to look at that. If a guy sees a woman being attacked or sexually assaulted, what options does he have? Well, if there's another single guy, if he is a young man, if he's physically strong, maybe he can physically intervene. Dominic Raab, actually, in the UK, says that he personally intervened in a case, and he cited that as an example of where men can get involved. Assuming he's telling the truth, and he's not just, embellishing himself a little bit. Assuming that's true, then, fair play to him. But there is another question here. If we really are talking about equality, one could argue, why should a man risk his personal safety for a stranger? Now, personally, I would get involved, probably, but I'm not going to judge another man for maybe deciding to call the police instead, or maybe verbally remonstrating rather than getting physically involved. Um, so really, when feminists talk about men need to step up, the way I would look at it is bad men, men who do abuse women, um, they're not going to change their behavior because of placards and editorials in newspapers condemning manhood in general. You don't get the bad men by shaming all men. It's a stupid concept. Um, that's not the same as downplaying the problem. I do believe there are some men who have a regressive attitude, and I've personally seen it. I've seen guys being quite sleazy, and you know, I I remember a situation I was in. I was with two friends, female friends, and we were out clubbing, and I could see a guy who was basically not taking no for an answer. Now, I'm not going to pretend I put on some massive bravado, but I did sort of go over and say, "Look, pal, they're not interested. Just, back off." But I done it in a way as to not inflame the situation. He was clearly drunk, and I probably, because he was drunk, I probably could have easily done something to him, but I didn't see the point of escalating it. So I said, look, just go and have a good time. These ladies aren't interested, just leave it there. Now, I'm not saying that I was being a knight in shining armor. Honestly, I'm not going to, if my friend's uncomfortable, and I'm not going to do nothing. But this is the point that feminists don't seem to understand, or they undervalue. Most men are decent, most men will step in. So shaming all men is preposterous, and as far as I'm concerned, it is misandry. So, the school apologizing, that's better than nothing, but shouldn't have done it in the first place. And it make one wonder where their ideology is coming from. I mean, why is misandry acceptable? Why is that sort of collective male shaming acceptable? Feminists need to answer that. If you're a feminist, you're a woman, you're a feminist, and you're saying, "Oh, but no, it's not all women think like that." I agree, they don't, and I don't think every feminist thinks like that. But this is a good opportunity, a situation like this, to prove it. Condemn it. Simple as that. Just condemn it. If you're expecting men to condemn misogyny, then it's up to reasonable feminists to condemn misandry. And there is misandry within feminist ranks and within modern feminist history. Excuse me. One only has to look at the Scum Manifesto by Valerie Solanas. Now, that wasn't some fringe publication, that was a bestseller. Literally, a book detailing hatred of men and boys. It's I'm wary of any movement that is dividing people insofar as collective shaming of any one group. So as a man, no, I don't accept that, and I do hope that the school really reflects on this. I don't think it's good enough to say, oh, well, we had good intentions. I think they need to me, that's a non-apology. I think they need to really say, this was wrong, we shouldn't collectively shame boys. Something akin to that, rather than just saying with good intentions. Um, that pisses me off, quite frankly. Um, Now, I've obviously spoken about education debates recently with what's happening in Batley. So I'll follow up by saying the way to protest this is peacefully. Express dissent. I actually contacted the school. They have a website. I left a message expressing my contempt for that sort of policy, but I didn't make any threats, and I never believe teachers should be threatened. So, shouldn't be any threats against a head teacher or anything like that. However, her decision to do this was it wasn't just well intentioned. I think it was just bigotry. I think it was misandry, and that needs to be called out. So saying it's inappropriate to me is just, oh well, we got this wrong, we were found out. It was misandry, plain and simple. And it is about time that reasonable feminists started calling out misandry. If they expect men to speak out against misogyny, it seems reasonable that they speak out against misandry. Um, Australia's had its fair share of these gender debates, of course. There was the famous speech by Julia Gillard on misogyny. Um, I I'm not going to comment too much on that. I don't know all the details. But I do think that some feminists throw the term around to deflect legitimate criticism. Having said that, I know that there are bad attitudes to women out there. I'm not going to say there aren't. I'm not going to say there aren't sleazy guys. I'm not going to say there aren't things that need to improve. In Britain, for example, I've seen a case recently where it was shocking. A young girl had reported sexual assault to the police numerous times, and they actually fined her for wasting their time, and she ended up taking her own life. Which was abhorrent, absolutely abhorrent. So there are areas where I think women have legitimate concerns. I'm not going to dismiss that. All I'm saying is do not shame men collectively, and don't expect men to collectively, stepping up. You have to describe what that means. Does it mean condemning abuse because most men already do? Does it mean intervening because most men would? What exactly more can the average guy do? That's the question. Um, I know that I wouldn't walk by if I saw a woman being hurt. But having said that, there's another phenomenon. I've heard of guys who have intervened, and there's been situations where, let's say, for example, some guy is being really rough with his wife or girlfriend. Then another guy sees it, he intervenes, and she actually turns on him. She'll back the husband or the boyfriend and say, it's none of your business. Whether that's Stockholm syndrome or what, I don't know. But more often than not, being a good Samaritan and stepping in can lead to problems. That's not to say you shouldn't do it, but in the end of the day, why should a man risk his personal safety for a stranger? I think in this day and age, there is a reasonable question about that. Um, for me personally, I would judge the situation. Would I confront a gang who's like gang raping a girl? I've never been in that situation. I don't know because morally it would disgust me and I'd want to intervene. Practically, what would happen? I'd intervene and I'd be outnumbered. I'd be beaten to a pulp, and it wouldn't necessarily help her anyway. So in that situation, I'd probably call the police and try and watch the situation and maybe try to distract them or something. I don't know, but I just know from experience that I don't walk by, and that's what annoys me about the feminist attitude. This idea that men aren't stepping up. Most men are. I really think that as men, we need to stand up to the bad guys, but also stand up to the feminist man shaming because we don't have to answer to that. We don't have to justify to feminists our masculinity. So this whole idea of toxic masculinity, my question to that would be, are you talking about a particular kind of man? You know, in which case, fair enough. Or are you talking about masculinity in general? Because there's positive masculinity, and that's what I believe in. And that requires a whole video of its own. But yeah, this school is disgraceful for doing that, and it kind of disgusted me when I read it, to be honest. But the protests or the backlash should be peaceful. There should be no threats against the teachers or anything like that. It should be peaceful, but it should be blunt because this was sheer misandry.